In 2025, food prices in Canada are expected to go up between 3 and 5%. And here in Nova Scotia, they're once again forecasted to increase at a higher rate than that Canadian average. That's according to an annual food prices report published by a group of Canadian universities. The lead author of the report says that's because Nova Scotia and other provinces in our region don't process much food. That's operations like canning fruits and vegetables that get food from farms onto grocery store shelves. That means we have to import a lot of what we eat, leaving us more vulnerable to economic shifts like higher energy costs and the falling Canadian dollar. Even when we can produce our own food, it might need to get sent elsewhere to be processed. All those transportation and fuel costs add up, meaning groceries can also often be more expensive here than in other regions.
Everything's trucked in. Absolutely, and our port doesn't really serve us well when it comes to food because a lot of the food that we actually get through ports go through Montreal, not Halifax.
Let's take a look at beef, for example. In Canada, the number of cattle we have is the smallest since 1987. Less supply and strong demand mean beef has hit record high prices recently. In October, the average price of beef strip loin cuts was about $25 per kilogram in Canada, but in Nova Scotia, it was nearly $5 a kilogram more than that. We also import vastly more beef from other provinces than we produce and consume at home. But what if we could make and process our own food? Well, that might be a challenge. The president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture says over the last few decades, we've lost food processing capacity across the board. Our smaller population likely played a role in that.
Some of that processing capacity has moved out of region and other neighboring regions where there's more population density and easier access to markets and maybe on the supply side easier access to supply as well.
Melvin says bringing back food processing capacity to the region could make food prices here less prone to big fluctuations. To do that, he says we need to take a comprehensive look at what processing we need in Atlantic Canada and strategically invest in those areas.
It's taking that high level 10,000 foot look first to see what's needed, what would be viable, what's going to work well for both the producers, the farmers in Atlantic Canada, as well as the net result for consumers on the back end too.
Melvin says with things like the worsening effects of climate change, though, it probably won't get any easier to keep the cost of food under control. Andrew Lamb, CBC News, Halifax.